This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everyone, this is Brett Zalaski. Sorry for the delay and all this. I've had a pretty incredible planes, trains, and automobiles, and I'll be a lot more stationary as we continue to do this in the future. So, um, wanted a couple things real quick. Obviously, now I've had a chance to go through a lot of your modules, and I wanted to talk about what are some of the things that I picked up from it before I get to some of your questions. The first thing that I would say is make sure that when you're thinking about the questions that you are asking to people, you're thinking about what's the type of response you want. So, a lot of the questions that I heard from this group were people saying things that were meant to try to throw a dart at something and hope to get it. So, um, do you like soccer? Do your kids like soccer? Having a lot of those questions. A lot of the response was sometimes those are meant for good information, but a lot of you were saying it in the hopes that they were going to say something positive about it, and that isn't always the case. And so I would just make sure that when you get on the phones with people, you're really attempting to learn about them, and using those questions to get information that's going to help you get closer to a sale. I think that's really critical as you think about the questions that you're meaning to ask. And then I would also just make sure that you make that you make them the spotlight of the show. It seemed like a lot of these were meant to be asked with the intent of how can we get to give them the information about us as quick as possible. And this goes back to that first question of just being able to say, I need to learn about them. I need to understand about them. This conversation isn't about talking about us. This conversation is about what do I need to learn about that person to be able to make that sale happen better. And so that's what I just keep pushing all of you on is when you ask questions, make sure that you're really learning about them, and you're not as focused on, man, I hope they give me the information that I can then use to make a sale on them by talking about our product. The idea is, how do I learn about them so I can make them a recommendation based off of how they're going to use the product? And I think as you see, as I answer some of these questions, you'll see. There are a couple things first. I had a question about the modules and how long they're supposed to take. As you learn to navigate the platform, I'm having to relearn to navigate the platform. I would say that the time's going to vary. And if you continue, and I had some people say it was taking 2 to 3 hours. If it continues to take that long, just let me know, and I can help navigate the platform a little bit better. I want this to be a very positive experience, not one that it feels like is really pulling time out of your week. And the second thing I'd say is, I'm going to put this in the email too, but let's make sure that we figure out a time that's best for all of us. And we don't have to be beholden to the Thursday at 6:30. We can really work to find a time that's best. So let's get out of the questions. In reference to what the module says, we are not selling sports. We are selling what happens to people as a result of the sport. How would you sell to a person that has zero interest in the sport and hasn't heard of our new league? I'm a huge believer that soccer is still the only sport that it is 100% better to see it in person than it is on your couch. You can't say that about baseball. You can't say that about basketball. You can't say that about football. Those sports are absolutely very even, if not leaning towards the couch. Still think soccer is one of the most unique fan experiences in the whole world, and most specifically in North America. And so I think making sure that you reframe it around the experience and talking about the positives of the experience will always allow that to happen. And the second thing is, if they truly, genuinely have no interest, don't worry about selling to them. If there's someone that loves experiences, then yeah, that's someone to talk to. But if they literally just want to beat you over the head that they don't want soccer, you don't have to spend time on them. One of the things I always tell my sales reps is we are in the relentless pursuit of great sales conversations. And if someone doesn't want to have a great sales conversation with you, don't have it. Next is, since the CAMPL is brand new, our schedule full rosters aren't released. When approaching new businesses, prospecting, how can we as a sales team continue to increase our sales without a roster or schedule? Sell hope. I think that's the biggest thing that you can do. And then latch on to every news story about your teams like it's the greatest piece of news of all time. If you sign a player, release your logo, announce your name when the schedule gets released, whatever it is, make sure that whatever news you've announced, you talk about it like it's the greatest thing that's ever happened, like it's the biggest deal that's ever happened. I mean, ultimately, the great thing about it is there is no real narrative. When you think about, the NHL, or you think about the CFL, a lot of the narratives of those sports are written by what people know about them. There's none here. So your ability to educate people about why news is important is critical. So I would say make sure when you get those pieces of news, oversell it, and then I would keep coming back to the fan experience. The fan experience in soccer, you can't miss it. You can't beat it. And there's a huge reason why Major League Soccer has passed the NHL and the NBA in terms of average fans per game, and it's 100% the fan experience. It is far better to be in a stadium than it is elsewhere. Just this past weekend, I was in Atlanta for MLS Cup, and there were 73,000 people, and it was almost like a religious experience for me. And I'm someone who goes to church, about how cool it is that the sport continues to grow. And by talking about the experience, talking about the growth of the sport, that's your opportunity to help create that FOMO to them. But again, that comes in the context of learning about them. Are they soccer fans? Are they experienced fans? Are they people that like the newest things? You've got to learn that about them so you can use the right thing to be able to go back and sell them. Another question is, get people who we leave multiple voicemails for us to call back. We change the voicemail each time with relevant information. Sections sold out. We want to get you good seats before we go on sale to the public. Last chance for priority. What else can you recommend? You're trying to get people who have left a deposit for season tickets to call us back. Whew. This is a tough one. And if you find the voicemail that gets a response, we'd love to know. The biggest thing I'd say is, clearly voicemails aren't working for these people. So I would consider, a lot of people are using their telephone numbers off their cell phones now. I would text message these people. I would email these people. I would connect with them on LinkedIn. I'd connect with them on Twitter, and I'd make the ask. This doesn't have to be just a telephone conversation. I use all the information that you have available to you and personalize the process as much as possible. If you've learned anything about them when it came to getting the deposits or anything like that, I'd use that information when you're reaching back out to them. Personalize the process, and then use as many various different ways to reach out with them and connect with them and talk with them as you can. It's not just a voicemail thing. I think you're onto the people that don't respond to telephones anymore. I think at this point it really is about how do we spread our net as wide as possible through all the different ways that we have to communicate with people these days. What are your favorite, most useful Elite Eight that you collect from prospects? So people here are asking me about what are my Elite Eight questions when it comes. And here's what I'll say. I love the stuff that's in those, and I think what Bill put in there is incredible when it comes to thinking about all the questions that you can ask someone. But here are the things that I'm really focused on when I'm talking to someone on the phone. I'm trying to figure out how many tickets they need in their package. I'm trying to think about where their seating location is and what package that person should buy. So I think about all the questions that I ask are incredibly focused on those. And so my 8 favorite questions are: how was your experience? What did you like about your experience? What didn't you like about your experience? Who did you take to the game? Why did you take that person to the game? Who else would you like to take to the game? How did you like your seating location? In a perfect world, where would you sit within the stadium? Listen, I believe that rapport is important and connecting with people is important, but I think the most important thing is doing our job and connecting with them and making sure that that we get them closer to tickets all the time. And like I said, I love all those questions, and I believe that so many of those questions can come up across the course of a conversation. And as I get to know people and have that conversation with people and try to earn their trust. But I'm going to take that one a little bit differently. And if you want to tell on me with Bill, you certainly can. But those would be my Elite Eight as I thought about it and put some time into it. While it's important to reach out to all businesses and industries, in your MLS experience, were there any industries that really resonated with buying soccer tickets? Such a good question, because there are. In my experience, here are the types of companies that really soccer tickets really resonate with. First, look at the USL and look at Major League Soccer, and look at the organizations and the companies that are sponsoring Major League Soccer in the USL. Look at some of your local youth soccer programs and see what organizations are sponsoring your local youth soccer organizations. My biggest thing is that they're buying soccer, they'll buy soccer. And you'll see a lot of companies that cross over, and you'll see a lot of companies that are spending money on soccer to promote their golf tournament or whatever it is. If they're spending money on soccer, they'll spend money on your soccer. Attack those first. Second, look at types of companies that are cutting edge tech companies, advertising agencies, marketing agencies, digital agencies, all those companies that think they're really cool, or any that you see advertised they're really cool. Like if you see people advertise about open space or results only work environment, those are people that think cool, and soccer is really cool right now and really global right now. So those are the types of companies that will connect to soccer. And then the third one is look for companies and organizations that are over leveraged by young employee people. So things like staffing agencies, sales organizations that are predominantly entry level salespeople. You know, if they're young, they probably like soccer because that's a demographic that likes soccer. So thinking about what companies and organizations have a large young that are largely populated by young people, or people that think the sport is cool, or people that have bought soccer. Such a great question, and I'd love to follow up with any of you individually on that if you have any questions. It was mentioned that 81% of prospects are closed on the fifth call, yet only 10% of reps make it to the fifth call. What if we're told they're not interested after the first or second call? Should we still pursue them but less aggressively, or do we put them aside until next season? Put them aside. You know, I don't think that that's what it's talking about. I think it's hunting people down and tracking them down until you get them on the phone. I think that's what those numbers are about. If someone tells you no or not now, I would make sure that you ask when a better time to follow up is. If it's never, cross them off. If they give you a time to follow up, then use that time to follow up, and call them back then. Like I said, we're in the relentless pursuit of great sales conversations. And if someone doesn't want to have a great sales conversation with you, don't have a great sales conversation with them. It's totally fine. Great question again. And when do you break up with a prospect? I love this question. I have a really good rule of thumb when it comes to breaking up with a prospect, and I love that you use breakup on this. First, I have a rule of thumb for this. My rule of thumb is if you're looking at the name of someone that you used to like, oh, I had such a good conversation with James Bond, and now you're looking at that person's name and you hate them. Oh, that James Bond, you won't get back to me. That's the time to break up with them. That guttural reaction is your body just telling you it's time to get away from them. It's time to break up with them. It's time to move on in that situation. And the last question I got was, how do you handle a gatekeeper who is reluctant to provide you decision maker information? I think it's okay. I would ask the gatekeeper what her or his email address is, if there's a chance to leave a voice message for the decision maker. And this gets to one of my other silver bullets in sales. That is, when you respond back to the gatekeeper, you respond back to the executive, and you write them an email or you leave them a voice message, make sure you say how amazing it was to work with the executive assistant. For two reasons. One, it shows the decision maker that you're a different person, that you're paying attention, that you're not the same as everyone else, that you're thoughtful in the way that you're going to reach out in your approach. And the second is sometimes the helper is the one who actually filters the emails or the conversations, and I promise you that you want to have that person put that in front of them. Saying something nice about them will be the first way that they're able to do it. Again, my apologies for last week. That's completely on me. A lot of planes, trains, and automobiles and moving around, but I can't wait to talk on Thursday, and can't wait to continue to see your videos and get updated on everything else, and look forward to continuing this dialogue as we go forward. Thanks, everyone.